It's the weekend again, at least it is while I'm recording this. Why wait until the weekend? You can listen to this whenever you need to. It's always a good day to focus on your recovery from fibromyalgia. This audio is about 30 minutes long, so do stop and start it whenever you feel like it. It covers 3 topics: the impact of fibromyalgia on your finances, financial poverty and support, top tips for helping with everyday tasks, and the impact of family and friends on both your illness and your recovery. None of those sound like very sexy topics, but there are some really important points here. Come back and revisit this audio in bite-sized chunks whenever you need. I am here to support your recovery. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, welcome back. Thank you for finding me, and congratulations for getting to this point of positivity in your illness. I suffered from fibromyalgia for 7 years, disabled with a blue badge for 3, and my poor son, who was a child then, was supported by Somerset Young Carers. So with that, I'm going to start, as always, with some gratitudes. Gratitude to the help I received, like from Somerset Young Carers, from my friend Anita Shin and Sam Payne, and of course my son, who's all grown up now, and I'm so proud of him. These audio notes are designed to support the information in the 5 ebooks, Fibromyalgia, Road to Recovery, and you can find them under my pen name, Elizabeth McSweeney, in the links to Amazon below. Today, I'm focusing on Book 3, or Volume 3. But first, as always, a little recap. I wrote the books over 8 years ago, and the cathartic process of writing, plus the knowledge of researching the condition, plus the will to allow the universe to show me the right path for my recovery, led me to where I am now. That's why I'm sharing it all with you. The books come in 5 parts, or 5 volumes, covering explanations of the condition. Fibromyalgia, what it is, pathways to diagnosis, usually through specialist rheumatology consultants, pain management, the role of family and friends, medical research combined with anecdotal evidence from 35 other people, masses of top tips, experiences and valuable information, which I can't possibly read out to you in an audio. It all culminates in volume 4 of the books, which is a collection of encyclopedic proportions. It's got information about medical treatments, alternative treatment therapies, useful deacidifying diets, vitamins, minerals, and the benefits of certain types of physical exercise, especially helpful yoga, tai chi, stretching, Pilates, and I'll talk about aquatherapies also. In volume 5, you'll find the principles of healing that I use to recover, and also a roadmap for a structure, a framework that you can use for your own recovery. What we didn't have much evidence about 9 years ago was the role of CBD and the endocannabinoid system. Data on the many people suffering from fibromyalgia who are self-medicating using cannabis. It's estimated that 1.4 million people in the UK use cannabis to help with chronic pain. It remains illegal to grow it and self-medicate, but there are 180,000 doctors registered here to prescribe, and there will be much more information about this in the future. CBD is a legal ingredient in cosmetics and toiletries, and this year we will see the launch of my new cannabis, or should I say CBD wellness range. Green, the art of cannabis. It's 2020 now, by the way. We'll be looking for people to review the products, so do get in touch. Follow the details below. In the first 2 audios to support materials in Book 1 and 2, I spoke about the power of words. Words are like incantations. They bring forth and summon and shape our reality. Throughout the series Fibromyalgia, Road to Recover, I used the term, when I was writing, I used the term us fibros to show that I'm with you. I know what the condition is like, sometimes a living hell. However, please be vigilant. I have realised that since it is so important during your recovery process that you stop identifying yourself as an illness. People with cancer, for example, don't go around saying us cancers. Interesting, isn't it? You are so much more than fibromyalgia. So much more than fibromyalgia is allowing you to be right now. But you can recover. I did, and if one human being can, then another can. I'd like to draw your attention to the website CFS Unravelled, where you can find a wonderful collection of testimonials from people who have recovered from both chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia syndrome. This is all to be celebrated. My books and audios are about hope, but not blind hope, but faith based in human experience. The point of departure for my books were a research question I collated from responses via Fibromyalgia Association UK many years ago, and through which I realised that I was not alone. Everyone had suffered multiple traumas, physical, psychological, spiritual, emotional, before their onset of the fibromyalgia condition. So let's get on and recap the crucial keys to recovery covered in the last two audios. We looked at post-traumatic events and became aware of how our bodies continue to carry them physiologically. That's the effect of post-traumatic stress. So, healing past traumas is the first key to full recovery. And here I was fortunate enough to find counsellors and therapists trained in EMDR and EFT techniques. Don't worry if you don't know what they are, I will be covering them later. So that's the first key to recovery, healing past trauma and post-traumatic stressors. And key 2, overcoming insomnia. The fibromyalgia condition brings with it sleep disturbances, which means that the body of someone suffering from fibromyalgia is not experiencing deep healing sleep, which means they wake up more tired and in more pain than the day before. In order to recover, this cycle must and can be broken. Personally, as I recovered, my sleep improved, but all of the bags of pain meds and pharmacy products prescribed to me, I kept sleeping tablets on standby for many months during my recovery, even when I had stopped taking the likes of morphine, gabapentin, naproxen and many other painkillers. Here, I hypothesise that many of you may be using cannabis and CBD to help you sleep. And if you are, I'd love to hear from you. If that's the case, please contact me using the links below. In the last audio and in book 2, there is a Yoga Nidra guided sleep meditation. But don't go to sleep now. Let's get on with book 3, volume 3 or book 3. It's all about strategies for daily coping. And this is the audio support material for that book. When I suffered from fibromyalgia between 2003 and 2010, I followed that slippery slope so often walked by sufferers, moving from full-time work to part-time work and then having to halt my career altogether, walking that often lonely path down a slippery slope and into financial poverty. The repercussions of those years have left a financial hole in, for example, my pension pot that I'm still feeling now. But I'm so glad I recovered, and I have another 30 years left to live, so plenty of time to turn that one around, and it's becoming a welcome challenge rather than a petrifying fear. When I suffered from fibromyalgia, I was living in Somerset in the UK. Also at a time of peak rural poverty in warmth, when the cost of oil peaked at world record highs and the only form of heating in rural areas was oil. Can you imagine? 3 times I had oil stolen from my tank and suffered increased pain because of being physically cold. I think during these times of hardship is where I found the absolute determination to recover. I just absolutely refused to suffer anymore. I was lucky to live in the UK at that time, and I received disability living allowance, which later transitioned into the state benefit called ESA, Employment Support Allowance. Now, many people will find themselves having to claim universal credit if they're ill, and many people fought very hard to get fibromyalgia recognised and recategorised as a disability, and it is in the UK, and we're all very grateful to everyone who fought this battle. But there are 2 things I want you to focus on here, now, today. First, a disability it is indeed, but it is not for life. You can recover. And second, the gratitude. With the healing pathway, always finding and revisiting the gratitude and giving thanks. Thank you to everyone who's helped us in our fight for financial support while we cannot work, everyone who has supported our children while we needed care, and even the government who in the UK have applied an austerity programme to such extreme and often hell-bent on ideological cruelty when it comes to victimising the poor, the sick, the vulnerable. Even within that, in order to recover, we must feel gratitude for the support, whether that is in the form of charities or government welfare benefits. Remember, you are loved, you are being supported. Accept that support. There is no better time to start your healing journey than now. I feel 100% confident that when the time is right for you, you will find the right path to recover fully, just like you found me here today. With this in mind, I'd like to discuss something that will make you think. I'm not saying it to provocate, but to help. Please be grateful for the benefits and support you receive, but please make sure that this is supporting your recovery process and your healing and not keeping you in illness. In order to recover, you need to flip how you think about the pain of fibromyalgia, not so much as a disabling illness, but as a healing journey. You have suffered trauma and you need to grieve in order to heal. Please make sure that you view financial support such as ESA or Universal Credit as a resource for your healing journey. There is light at the end of the tunnel, and not as a financial poverty trap, which it will be if you let it consume you. Don't be too afraid to get well. Please also ask for help. Do not be ashamed to ask for help. In the UK, the Citizens Advice Bureau is a good place to find professional advocates well versed in knowing the correct terminology to write down in order to file successful applications for benefits from, for example, the DWP, Department of Work and Pensions. In Chapter 8, Volume 3 of my books, you will find some helpful do's and don'ts and some top tips and keywords and phrases when it comes to completing benefit forms. In Chapter 8, Volume 3, you'll also find details of one couple's fight for disability living allowance, of how Christine, despite needing help to dress, never applied, how as an invisible disability, fibromyalgia is much misunderstood and maligned, how a whole host of teachers, nurses, social workers, pharmacists and college lecturers wrote to me about having to give up their career paths because of it, how Veronica had to fight for her right to be off work sick, how Margaret, an NEB qualified nursery teacher, had to fight for her pension rights, how another woman had to fight for recognition of her condition from family and friends, saying, "When I first went off sick pay, my family were critical of how we'd cope financially." I will talk more about the role of family and friends in your recovery later, but now let's focus on this. It seems that there was a lot of fighting going on, a lot of resistance, which in and of itself puts your adrenals under stress, puts you in a fight or flight mode, puts you in what is called GAP, General Adaptation Syndrome, adrenal fatigue. One of the things about overcoming trauma is the natural healing process. One step of which is anger. I remember feeling angry about almost everything. I kept thinking, but I'm a Buddhist. I don't do anger. Oh, but I did. The anger from post-traumatic stress, from grieving, and from the illness itself was so trapped in my body. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the 7 stepping stones approach to grieving and how that helped me on the recovery process in future audios, and I'll talk you through it. But for now, anger. The continual fighting. Do you recognise this? In order to heal, you need to recognise the relationship between your emotional body and your physical body. Anger gets trapped very quickly in your body, your muscle fibres, your mitochondria, the little power stations in your cells. Anger gets trapped and is experienced as physical pain. With me, it was muscle spasms and allodynia, that shingles-like pain on my skin. Once I became mindful of my body's immediate reaction to external stimuli and internal emotion, I could stop myself from becoming completely exhausted. I'd still have to rest for hours at a time, but it became hours instead of the flare-up of days of incapacitation that can happen with the fibromyalgia. I might have mentioned before that I'm a Buddhist, and the philosophy of the oneness of life and its environment, known as Eshofuni in Japanese, helped me on my healing journey. In future audios, I will cover mindfulness meditation practices and how I harness them to support my own recovery. And I write about the history of the benefit system in the UK, how to claim it, the relationships between the fibromyalgia condition, our identity, ourselves and our environment in much more detail in the book that's volume 3. It's available on Amazon if you follow the link. I really can't read it to you all here right now. This audio is just extra support material, bringing out maybe the most salient points of the ebooks. After 10 years of health, these audios are just my added notes, if you like, the help I can give now to support you on your healing journey. Having said that, I'm not going to read all the books. Here is a direct excerpt from Volume 3 of Fibromyalgia to Recovery by Elizabeth McSweeney, which sums up everything I've been saying perfectly. And I quote, "On an esoteric or spiritual energy level, we can often attract and manifest our deepest fears and anxieties. On a physiological level, fears trigger adrenal fight or flight, constant stimulation of our sympathetic nervous system, and long-term damage to the central nervous system. Stress causes fibromyalgia flare-ups, and financial worries become a threat to our survival. Part of the key to recovery is not letting fears and anxieties overwhelm us. And here, government policy needs to be founded not on the assumption that everyone claiming incapacity benefit or disability living allowance is worthless or a benefit fraud, but on addressing the crucial role that these benefits play in our health, our sustained well-being, and ultimately our recovery from illness." So in Chapter 9 of Volume 3 of the Fibromyalgia Road to Recovery series, I wrote about how difficult it is to even cope with housework when you suffer from fibromyalgia. So this is point 3 of this audio. The books are a useful resource, Chapter 9 particularly, because it helps you to understand that you are not alone in this difficulty you are experiencing, and also because it includes top tips from, again, over 35 other people, not just me. Some of the practical top tips, like how organisation and time management is key when each job feels physically like climbing Everest and you have to take rest stops along the way. Top tips like don't be so hard on yourself. Don't worry if you can't finish a task. Leave it unfinished. Your health, your healing journey is more important in this moment. Allow yourself to cut back on housework. Change your bed a few days late. Does it really matter? Buy clothes that don't need ironing, but don't let fibromyalgia become a fashion lifestyle choice. Use occupational health aids to eliminate stretching or bending. Raise your sink, lower it to sit. Use an electric tin opener and electric knives. Buy small bowls, buckets and saucepans so that you're not carrying things that are too heavy. Oh, to hell with it. Buy packet meals and ready mashed potatoes. Give yourself a break. Do not berate yourself. Do not give yourself a hard time. You are not giving in. You are ill. You are healing. This moment is not permanent. So, I've covered the section on poverty and financial support, on practical support for everyday tasks, masses more in the books, but now I'm turning our attention to the most difficult part of all. In the last chapter of Volume 3, I wrote about the role of family and friends in both your recovery and your illness. Chapter 10, Family and Friends. In my research questionnaire in 2009, I asked how has fibro impacted on your family and friends, and I also asked a more general question, what is the worst thing about having fibromyalgia? One respondent wrote, apart from being in pain 24/7, it's the major impact on my family life. Another wrote, the fact that fibro is invisible and people don't understand. Edward from Wales summed it up thus, it's too difficult to explain. Because of the complex nature and the subjective nature of relationships, I wasn't going to write about the issues of family and friends at all. That is, until I conceded to pressure from the local members of Fibromyalgia Self-Help Group who persuaded me how crucial the issues are, how crucial it is that we give a platform to the topic and fully discuss the implications of having fibromyalgia and how it affects all of our human relationships. One woman from Buckinghamshire wrote to me, on bad days I feel useless and worthless, particularly when I remember that I can't contribute to the household budget. So first issue here is impact on our self-worth when we cannot work, especially when we are not financially independent. We are confusing here our value as a human being with the currency, that is money. Just as fibromyalgia appears as an uncontrollable physiological breakdown, the accompanying sense of being out of control spills over into and manifests as the emotive struggles of everyday life. What I needed was some help in explaining my illness to my young son, that it was not degenerative, terminal or permanent, but that for a while at least I couldn't do what other parents could. So then there is another issue, one of communication. One person wrote to me, friends find it hard to cope with, and I've given up on having relationships. And another wrote, some friends take it personally and feel hurt when I don't do things with them anymore. They seem to think I'm using it as an excuse. These comments highlight the issues of social exclusion and isolation and misunderstandings caused by the fibromyalgia condition. I once read an ignorant comment on a blog written by an anonymous man. It revealed his resentful belief that fibromyalgia is just an excuse for, and I quote, lazy people who expect other people to do everything for them. His comment betrayed his own expectations, which were not being met by another family member who was suffering from fibromyalgia. Some of your letters to me echoed similar views from family and friends. So now we unveil the issue of lack of compassion in our environment, a very common fibromyalgia misconception, an experience, a narrative. There's actually plenty of compassion in our environment, but it can be that our environment is presenting a lack of compassion from certain areas. I'd like to quote you this candid part of Volume 3, Chapter 10, which I wrote from my heart. And I quote, our friends used to help clean, always trying to bring our house up to their standards. They took pity on my son, and until his reactive behaviour became so unmanageable, he was grieving after all, he often spent days being fed and watered by others, being taken out to the beach or adventure park to visit other people's cousins and grandparents, being with other people's family. But what he really wanted was not to be taken away and looked after for days, but to be with his parent, for there to be food in his own cupboard and for his mum to be able to take him out. What we both really needed was practical, enabling support, both in the home and out of it. He needed someone trusted with authority on the subject to explain that his mum's fibro was painful and exhausting but not life-threatening, and that with the right practical help she would be able to be there for him and eventually recover. Now I have recovered, but it was a long and difficult journey. Now my daily mantra is, everything is perfect, everything is as it should be. I believe this so sincerely with a joyful heart that I cannot recognise the self which experienced that past life. The impact of fibro on me, of seeing other people looking after my son while I was unable to, was a conflicting mix of gratitude, guilt, and a decline in my own self-worth. In some ways, it was crucifying. Comparing myself to his friends' parents, and he also comparing me to his friends' parents. He would shout, "You're a rubbish mum." And one summer, I judged myself so harshly, and because of the relentless physical pain, my self-esteem had plummeted so low, and I actually really believed he would be better off without me. Unable to control my physical symptoms any longer, very depressed, I took an overdose of painkillers. It wasn't so much a suicide attempt, but rather that I just kept taking the tablets in the hope that the pain would go away. The usual daily dose, and then half an hour later, half a dozen, and then a sachet, and then a packet, and then another packet, and then another, until the pain hadn't gone away, but a desire to sleep forever had taken over. Now, I'm not telling you this now as a reminder, far from it, but because I want to let everyone currently feeling depressed by the pain of fibromyalgia know that it is not forever, that you can recover. And I am so genuinely grateful for the pain-free, fatigue-free and fibro-free quality of my life now. I'm also so grateful that I failed to kill myself. I can hardly believe that I nearly threw my life away. I also believe sincerely that if I can recover, anyone can. So, good friends are great, but here I want to pause for thought again and ask you to be aware of something else in your own life. Please be aware if you recognise the following. A real danger is that those stalwart, persevering friends may begin to thrive on our catastrophic situation. And they stop being good friends and start being bad for us. They're then acting in the role of martyr, which is the opposite of altruistic compassion. Our continual needs may begin to feel a need in them, their need to feel spiritually strong, physically more capable. And if you recognise this codependent type of relationship, it may be actually damaging your health, and it may be preventing you from recovering. Being able to recognise our relationships in this way, in the same way we recognise our connectedness and oneness with all aspects of our external environment, is the third crucial key we have found to help us on our healing journey. So we have recovering from past traumas. And now we have recognising our oneness with our environment. The third one, of course, actually the second one in order, was sleep. Breaking that insomnia pattern. In terms of our oneness with the environment, the Buddhist text called the Lotus Sutra defines a good friend as one who is sincere in their desire to assist and support others toward the correct path, i.e. of waking up to their own enlightenment. In terms of our journey through sickness and disability through fibromyalgia, the correct path is obviously a friend who guides us towards our recovery. So in this respect, I kind of hope I'm going to become a good friend to you. The opposite is also true. Someone who is not, in this sense, ultimately a good friend can lead us away from enlightenment, maintaining us on a path of suffering. Symbiotic, codependent relationships between adults are very complex, and they move through many aspects of our journey of fibromyalgia. It is difficult, but I want to focus here on the most important aspect. In order to recover your recovery process, you will need to be able to acknowledge your immediate manifest environment, like looking in a mirror. I want you to recognise and observe it, not to have a knee-jerk reaction to it. Observations only, please. If you recognise that you're in a codependent relationship, you may recognise that this is holding you in sickness, and the first thing you will then experience rushing through your body on acknowledging this situation is overwhelming panic. Because on a practical level, you have been depending on this person. You think you need them. You may well love them. I'm not saying you don't, and they may well love you. I'm not saying they don't. But what you're actually doing is giving your power away. It can be difficult to change your energy patterns if other people have unrecognised vested interest in maintaining your status quo. Their vested interest might be psychological, as touched on above, or it might be financial. They will have their own fears. And here's something that's even more terrifying. If we've had to give up work and claim government sick benefit, and that income, which is dependent on our being sick, is the only source of income to feed our children, then the thought of recovery might be terrifying, petrifying, in fact. And with that thought, I'm going to leave you by asking you to consider two very difficult questions. I won't be surprised if the questions evoke a certain level of anger in you. You shouldn't be surprised either, because anger is one of the healthy stepping stones of grieving and ultimately healing and recovery. But anger can first be making you ill. So question 1, why are you angry? And question 2, are you too scared to take your first steps towards full recovery?